Happy first Sunday of Advent. We're here with our November reading wrap-up, and we've got some great stories today for you, including a trip to Rome, a wonder worker saint, and a couple of real-life action-adventure stories.
The long Thanksgiving weekend was the perfect time to get some extra reading done, so let's go ahead and take a look.
Our Catholic read-along book for November was this one, The Activated Disciple by Jeff Cavins, which one of you recommended to us, so thank you for that.
So as we learned, this book is part of a 40-day challenge from Ascension to help you be more Christ-like, or you can read it as a standalone book, which is what we did.
And since it's Jeff Cavins, it has all the Jeff Cavins stuff you already love, like his knowledge and insight and his sense of humor.
So in it, he really talks about what it is like to follow your rabbi. And as part of that, he explains the 3 phases of education a Jewish student in Jesus' time would have gone through. And that was very interesting to learn about.
So it turns out that back in the day, Jewish students would start off learning all the stories in the Old Testament and how they connect before they would go on to studying all the different rules and regulations of the Jewish faith.
But what we see today is often the opposite of that. Kids will learn different church feasts and seasons, about the saints and individual Bible stories, but they don't often know and understand how everything connects through salvation history from Genesis to Jesus.
And that was a real light bulb moment for me as a catechist because I see this all the time in my classroom. Yes, my students, many of them know different Bible stories. They know about Moses and about David and Goliath, but they have no idea how those stories connect. They haven't connected the dots into the big picture. So I had to think about that. I think it is going to change how I do some things in my classroom.
We also appreciated his comment on how in the early days of the church, there were no advertising campaigns or marketing strategies to get people interested in the faith. What they did was people went out and they shared the good news about Jesus, and that was enough.
And honestly, it was a relief to see that in print. Jesus can take care of himself, and we just have to do our part to spread the good news.
So overall, this book was a really good read. It has lots of food for thought and something for everyone in it.
So I'm starting today with my Wonder Worker Saint book, and it's this one, St. Kevin of Glendalough. This is part of the Vision Book series, and we bought it for our church library, but I felt very called to read it before I turn it over to the library because I've always been intrigued by St. Kevin ever since we read The Blackbird's Nest, which is a wonderful picture book about him. Evidently, one day he was praying, he had his arms outstretched in prayer for so long that a blackbird built a nest in one of his hands. So it was fun to get to know him better. The author does a fantastic job of bringing him to life. You learn all about his friends, his family, how he communed with animals. During one Lent, he had an otter show up every morning and bring him a salmon for breakfast. So that was really fun to read about. He also built a famous abbey in Ireland at Glendalough, and he inspired so many men and women to join him in the religious life. So he is definitely a great saint. He's from back in the day, not long after St. Patrick. And it's really funny with this book because when I was done reading it, I thought, I really would like to know more about the abbey he built. So I made a mental note. I'm going to look up some pictures online, see what I can find out. And literally the next day, I was tidying up one of our bookshelves. And what did I find on the shelf but this book, Glendalough? And it has pictures, it has commentary, it has diagrams, it has literally everything you ever want to know about the abbey in it. And the funny thing is that no one in my house, including me, knows where this book came from. No one remembers buying it or seeing it before. We don't know how it got on that shelf. So apparently St. Kevin is still going strong in the miracle department. I also want to mention that in the back of the book, there is an author's note that explains how he came to write the book, all the research he did, and I thought that was enormously helpful, so don't miss that. Overall, this was a great read for me. I highly enjoyed it. I do love reading about the Wonder Worker saints. So now I'm done with St. Kevin, or maybe I'm just starting with him. A friendship has formed, but this book is going to go join the rest of the Vision books at the church library.
So my book today is The Green Ember by S.D. Smith. So this is one that I found randomly on Hoopla, and it was an audiobook. I thought it looked good. I thought I would listen to it. So it follows Heather and Pickett, who are two young rabbits. They're living a fairly normal life with their parents and their baby brother. But as it happens, one day their home is attacked and they are forced to flee. So I would 100% say that this book has a very classical adventure feel to it. You see Heather and Pickett start to unravel the depths of the evil that's tearing their world apart, learn the history of their land and the history of the family. There is tons of sword fighting and outwitting the enemy, all sorts of action and adventure in this book. So I would say the age range is probably a little bit younger though, maybe late elementary into middle school. You know, there's action, there's sword fighting, but it's nothing too grisly or grim. There is some talk on dealing with grief, but it's nothing that's, very deep or very heavy. So it's definitely geared towards slightly younger readers. Still though, I did enjoy this book. The authors built a very rich and complex world. I know there are some sequels to it, so I might be listening to those sometime in the future. But it was just a nice break. It was some easy reading. The audiobook was just under 8 hours, and I did have a good time with this one.
My next book is a really fun travelogue called Piazzas, Popes, and Pasta, written by Luann Zerlo. So the year is 2013, and she's in a really stressful job, and she wants to make a change, but she's afraid. However, at the same time, she sees Pope Benedict stepping down from the papacy, making a big change in his life, and she thought, if he can do it, I can do it too. So she quit her job and she moved to Rome for 4 months. There she was a theology student at the Pontifical College, the Angelicum or Angelicum, I'm not sure how to say that. And she was also a tourist, and she just enjoyed, a total change from her normal life. The book started off as just a collection of email that she sent back home to friends and family. They wanted to hear all about life in Rome, what's your favorite flavor of gelato, how much does olive oil cost, and they also wanted to hear about that one time she was 15 feet away from Pope Francis. She made a point during her whole 4 months there to be on her phone as little as possible. She said when she was in St. Peter's Square, she wanted to be in St. Peter's Square and observe it and not just see it through the lens of a camera. And in one of the neatest parts of the book, she's able to verify that one of her long-distant ancestors is actually an official saint in the church, Saint Zerlo, which is just so cool. Now, there were a couple of times in the book where she took some deep dives into politics and theology because that's her field of expertise, so I understand totally why she went down that path. However, I felt like that was sometimes more information than I was really looking for in a fun travelogue. However, this book has been on my TBR pile for quite some time. I'm really glad I got to read it, and I highly enjoyed it. Although now I want to go spend 4 months in Rome. So if you don't hear from us for a while, that's probably where we are. Last up for me is a true life action adventure story called Of Good Courage. It is the story of Trong Van Cao. He was born in Vietnam to an impoverished family. He had an abusive father, and in the middle of all that, the Vietnam War was going on. So as you can imagine, life was really hard for him, but he did manage to escape the country right before the fall of Saigon. I'm not going to tell you how that happened because I don't want to spoil it, but oh my goodness, it had me on the edge of my seat. So he's a refugee. He goes to Guam, he goes to Hawaii, and he has to basically reinvent his whole life. He goes on to be a very successful businessman. He runs his own company, but it's not until later in life when he has some serious health problems develop that he rediscovers his Catholic faith. And that spurred him to kind of write down his whole story. And it's really neat because looking back over everything that's happened to him, he can see how the hand of God was with him the whole time. So this story has a bit of everything: action, adventure, courage, faith, friends lost and found. Oh my goodness. And I really love the cover of the book too, with the dolphins. The dolphins play a role in one of the stories, but again, no spoilers. Trong truly has led an exciting life, and I'm glad that all of his escapades and adventures are all captured right here. I don't know, maybe this will be made into a movie someday. It would be a very exciting one.
All right, so that was a look at all the books that we read in the month of November.
So raise your hand if you want to take 4 months off and go to Rome and just enjoy the city. That would be a dream come true.
All right, and as always, let us know down in the comments what books that you read this month.
So we hope you enjoyed today's video. Happy reading, have a blessed Advent, and we'll see you next time. Bye.